Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 18 2025 NFL predictions. Well, 255 games through the 2025-2026 season. We have come to this point. The final week, the final game of Week 17 and the final 16 games next week. It is unbelievably amazing that we have gone through this football sprint or marathon of the 2025 season with all the craziness of the season, and we are finally here at the end of the regular season. I've had a blast doing these predictions. I appreciate all my viewers out there that have watched all the videos this year through the regular season, all the extended and short ones. I greatly appreciate your support and your nice words and kind feedback to all my predictions. For the year overall, it's been a little bit of a disappointing year just in terms of my predictions. I thought I really could have built off of all the success I had last year and how I really started out really well this year. But overall though, I ended up being about a little bit below average, or with my against the spread picks about right around where I usually am. But I look at this year and go, I think the absolute joy of the NFL, especially this year, especially with Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow being out of the playoffs in the AFC, what's going on in the AFC North Division, is that you really do not know in the AFC who is going to get there, and I would even argue in the NFC. There are years where you can just watch teams and go, okay, this team is clearly and definitively the best team in the league or the best team in the conference, and if anybody beats them, it'll be surprising, or it's not going to be that much of a contest. This year, I honestly think it's an open race for everybody out there. An open race for all the different seeds, all the different talents, all the different styles of play, offensive teams, defensive teams, run-based teams, all the different coaches. And I think, this Week 18, there's a lot still at stake for a majority of the games. And I just think, there's going to be a lot of important questions for a lot of teams once this week ends this following week. I do want to remind everybody again, I am taking the Los Angeles Rams here -8 tonight, and the LA Rams straight up to beat the Atlanta Falcons. That is a big game because if the Atlanta Falcons lose, that basically means that the winner of Panthers-Bucks does get the South. There is a weird tiebreaker that even if the Panthers lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, if the Falcons beat the Rams tonight, and then they beat the Saints at home the week after, then the Carolina Panthers, the tiebreaker doesn't just go to the head-to-head. It goes to the next tiebreaker, which would be Carolina, due to the Panthers sweeping the Falcons this year, which is unbelievable to think about in a crazy way. So this game for the NFC South does have some implications, especially if Atlanta does win. But overall for the week, with one more game to go, last week I had the perfect 500 trilogy there. I went 7-7-1 against the spread so far, and straight up I went 9-6 with one game to go. So through 255 games, I am now 119, 131-5 against the spread, and straight up now I am 164, 90-1. That equals 47.7% against the spread. Straight up, that equals 64.5% straight up. So I will greatly and I will gladly take non-losing weeks. I've been able to kind of string it together. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to really climb out of the hole of my against spread predictions. And my straight up predictions, 64.5% rounded up. I'm not doing average, what I do every year. But for the losses I had, hey, who would have thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after they had a big moment, they get to their moment to where they get blown out by the Rams. They have the easiest schedule, one of the easiest schedules, including having home games against their divisional opponents, playing the Dolphins of a third-string quarterback. Who would have thought the Bucs would have lost 4 straight games after beating the Cardinals? Who would have thought that? Shout out to Quinn Ewers. He had that big touchdown to Weeze, that 60-plus yard touchdown. That was the best game he's played in his career. It's a nice little moment for the Dolphins. that win probably keeps Mike McDaniel's job. I don't think he should keep it because I don't think the Dolphins are going to be moving forward. But the Bucs, due to the Panthers' ineptitude, get to barely hang on there. That was one of the losses. Steelers, Browns. The Browns haven't won in Cleveland, I believe, in the last 4 years. And I should have thought about that. Even though I told everybody, and I'm kicking myself here. I told everybody, doing this video last week, I said to everybody out there, don't be surprised if the Browns win this game. And I was just mad because Shedeur Sanders had literally one good quarter of football. I'd give the guy a D. Like, that was a pathetic performance. He only threw for about 20 yards the whole second half of the game. He threw 2 interceptions. The second one was just an all-time, or the second one was just a really bad decision on his part to just chuck it up right to Kyle Duggar. But Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, just when you think, hey, the Steelers have this opportunity, and I definitely feel like with the AFC North and the NFC South, I definitely feel like it's kind of a hot potato-esque type thing between these teams. Like, somebody has to win these divisions, and somebody gets to host a playoff game. And I will agree that, maybe more so for the Panthers-Bucs thing, that's more disappointing, where you're going to have the bigger question of, should we have realignment, with that. But it's frustrating because, these teams, with how they've played, and you look at some of the wildcard teams, those wildcard teams, I would argue, deserve home playoff games over both these division winners. But that's not how the NFL is set up. They take their division winners and give them the home games. But, yeah, I just think, watching the Browns, and I think the Steelers, they really, offensively, without DK Metcalf, have no legitimate wide receiver to go to. And Darnell Washington broke his form, which is significant to me as well. But, that was a crazy finish. Looking at some of the other games, Jacksonville, Indianapolis. Kudos to Jacksonville, and shout out to the Duval man, Liam Cohen, first coach in NFL history to take a 4-win or fewer team and turn that team into a 12+1 team the following year. One of the better run defenses in the league, and they grinded out another win. So shout out to him. I think he's a couple wins away from actually passing Gus Bradley in 1 year to being the 5th winningest coach in the Jags franchise history. I know they've only been around for 30 years, but maybe that just shows you how bad and inept the Jacksonville Jaguars are. But shout out to him. He'd be my coach of the year, or Kyle Shanahan. If you watched one of the games of the year on Sunday night like I did, Bears-Niners was incredible. Robert Saleh and Dennis Allen both did not deserve their game checks in an 80-point game with over 50 first downs and 900 total yards of offense. But shout out to Brock Purdy, who had, I believe, the best game of the season, and I would argue the best game Purdy's had individually in about 2 years, knowing the context of the team. But now it sets up a huge game that I think should have been the Sunday night game on Sunday night between the Seahawks and the Niners for the 1 seed in the NFC. Instead, you're going to get Ravens-Steelers, maybe to my chagrin. But, I'll talk about the rest of the games as well as I get into my last set of predictions. And I do want to say that next week for the wild card round predictions, I will be putting out another video on Monday as well. So just a shout out there, a quick little aside there. I will tell everybody on wild card weekend when that video will come out for the divisional round for the playoffs. But I will let everybody know about that next week. But at least for the wild card round, that video will come out Monday for wild card weekend of the 2025 season. So it's time for my predictions. So on Saturday night, the NFL got a huge gift as well by how the scheduling panned out. They got all 3 games in the division that have serious significance into their positions. So it was very easy just to make the schedule that way. But here we go. So on Saturday, for the NFC South Championship, the NFC South Division title, when the 8-8 Carolina Panthers go to Tampa Bay to take on the 7-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ooh, what a doozy. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-point favorites in this game. This is a cruddy toss-up game. I know one of these teams has to win against the division. I'm going to take Tampa Bay here to win straight up, but I'll take Carolina here +3. If you had Carolina winning this game straight up, I couldn't blame you. But I'm going to take here Tampa Bay straight up, Carolina +3. And then the next game for the number 1 seed and the NFC West title, when the 13-3 Seattle Seahawks go to San Francisco to take on the 12-4 San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are 1.5-point favorites in this game. Give me San Francisco here -1.5 and San Francisco straight up. Then on Sunday, when the 6-10 New Orleans Saints go to Atlanta to take on the 7-9 or 6-10 Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Atlanta here, -2.5, and Atlanta straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-12 Cleveland Browns go to Cincinnati to take on the 6-10 Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Cincinnati here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Cleveland plus 7.5. Then the next game, when the 9-6-1 Green Bay Packers go to Minnesota to take on the 8-8 Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I think that's just due to the fact that the Packers are going to rest a majority of their starters. I'll take the Minnesota Vikings here to win straight up. If JJ plays, if JJ does not play, I will take the Green Bay Packers, and I will update that spread. I'll take the Green Bay Packers straight up because I do believe Malik Willis will play, because Jordan Love will not, because they're resting a lot of their guys. But I will take Minnesota here straight up, but Green Bay plus 6.5. But if JJ doesn't play, I will take the Green Bay Packers to win straight up here as well as the plus 6.5. So then the next game, when the 7-8-1 Dallas Cowboys go to New York to take on the 3-13 New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Dallas Cowboys here, -5.5, and the Dallas Cowboys straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-13 Tennessee Titans go to Jacksonville to take on the 12-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 10.5-point favorites in this game. The Jaguars do have to play their starters due to the AFC South title being on the line. But I will take Jacksonville here. They are 10.5-point favorites. I will take Jacksonville here, -10.5, and Jacksonville straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-8 Indianapolis Colts go to Houston to take on the 11-5 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 10.5-point favorites in their divisional game against the Colts. I will take the Houston Texans here, -10.5, and the Houston Texans straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-13 New York Jets go to Buffalo to take on the 11-5 Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are 9-point favorites in this game. I will take Buffalo here, -9, and Buffalo straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-8 Detroit Lions go to Chicago to take on the 11-5 Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Chicago Bears will be playing their starters due to the number 2 seed being on the line. But the Chicago Bears are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Chicago here, -2.5, and Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the 11-5 Los Angeles Chargers go to Denver to take on the 13-3 Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Denver here, -7.5, and Denver straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-10 Kansas City Chiefs go to Las Vegas to take on the 2-14 Las Vegas Raiders. The Kansas City Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites in this game, regardless of if it's Gardner or Chris Oludekon. The Kansas City Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here, -5.5, and Kansas City straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-13 Arizona Cardinals go to Los Angeles to take on the 13-3 or 12-4 Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams are 9.5-point favorites in this game due to the Rams being out of the divisional race. I expect them to be playing a lot of backups next week due to having no significance of playoffs seeding. So I will take the LA Rams to win straight up because I think the Cardinals are that bad. They can lose to a bunch of backups. But I will take the Arizona Cardinals plus 9.5. The next game, when the 7-9 Miami Dolphins go to New England to take on 13-3 New England Patriots. New England Patriots are 10-point favorites in this game. Give me New England here, -10, and New England straight up. The next game, when the 4-12 Washington Commanders go to Philadelphia to take on the 11-5 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 8.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles here, -8.5, and Philadelphia straight up. And lastly, in game 272, through 18 weeks of the NFL season, the last game, when the 8-9 Baltimore Ravens go to Pittsburgh to take on the 9-7 Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm sorry, when the 8-8 Baltimore Ravens go to the 9-7 Pittsburgh Steelers. The Baltimore Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take Pittsburgh here plus 3.5, but I will take the Baltimore Ravens to win the AFC North to close out the season. So give me Baltimore straight up, but Pittsburgh plus 3.5. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Panthers at Buccaneers. This game, it's so awkward, man. Like, you watch both teams, and the Bucs are just kind of a really sad disappointment. It's just because they've lost 4 straight games to the Saints, the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Dolphins. Like when the Bucks got blown out by the Rams at the, when Baker hurt his shoulder, and then Baker comes back and they beat the Cardinals. I thought the Bucks had a legitimate chance to win out the rest of their games to gain a bit of confidence, to have momentum and win the division outright. But boy, was I wrong. And it's awkward close losses. It's blocked field goals. It's Baker throwing terrible picks. It's Todd Bowles dropping curse words and F-bombs. And this entire Bucks organization should be really ashamed of itself. It has a chance to win the South for as bad as they played the last month in the part of the schedule they should have won. Like, nothing's going right. They have all their talent there. Mike's back. Chris is there. Like, they've had all these guys there. So it's just like there's just a disconnect or an awkwardness to the entire team. But at the end of the day, there's just a part of me going like, okay, Carolina, a team that through the last 9 games have won and lost each one of these games. So in theory, you could say the Carolina Panthers are due for a win. But they put up this statistic on CBS Sports that I will mention to everybody here. For teams that have had streaks like that in a season where they have kept alternating games, they could not, all of them, did not make the playoffs. And there is just a part of me going, the Bucks are at home. They are desperate. They have the better roster. The Panthers did lose a big tight end, Saunders, to an Achilles tear. Best wishes to him, to his health. Very unfortunate to hear that. And I just think if you're going to give me Baker and Bryce in a gotta-have-it, big-time, take-all situation, I will take Baker and the Bucks, who have won these games in the past before. I'm not going to be surprised at all if the Panthers win this game. The Panthers, have shown when, the pressure's on. They can come through the door and play well. The Panthers have a very good defense. They just played this team 2 weeks ago, and they pretty much had control, back and forth. But when I look at it, I just think the Bucks are at home. You have a little bit more confidence in Baker in this spot. They understand the desperation. I don't think any of the coaches are going to get fired. It's just all the pressure for the Bucks goes to next year. And it's just, I'm sorry, after watching that game against Seattle, as great as Seattle's defense has been, Bryce Young only threw for 50 yards, man. He was awful. He was dreadful yesterday, and I just think if you told me again in this situation where everything gets thrown out the window, but it's a divisional game, don't care about your record, you're playing one game for your life, I'll take Baker and his team with the talent they have over Bryce and his, especially at home. So, again, it's going to be, an interesting game. The Bucks and Panthers have both been kind of on weird roller coaster seasons, and you could argue the Panthers season at 500. You could argue that Dave and them should both stay. But I'm one of those people that believe that the Panthers lose this game with the opportunities they had to win the division in different spots. Both Dave Canales should be fired, and Bryce Young's fifth-year option should not. And I repeat, the fifth-year option on Bryce Young, if he loses this game on Saturday afternoon, that option should not be picked up. And the Panthers need to be looking for a new coach and a new quarterback with this game. If they win this game and they win the South, there are questions. Todd Bowles has to eat his mulligan this year, and there are questions about the Panthers or about the Buccaneers' future after next year, very large. And the Panthers, you give Dave a third year and you pick up the fifth-year option because Bryce was going to have a winning record and a division title. And I think that's enough. You can build off of that going into year 4, where he's earned the fifth-year option. You can say, okay, Bryce Young can lead us to the playoffs. So, but that's like Tampa Bay here straight up. But Carolina +3. Because, again, I'm not going to be surprised at all if Carolina wins this game. Not at all. Just because I feel like they are, this is that much of a 50-50 game. So that's why I like Carolina here +3, but Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the Seattle Seahawks. This one to me comes down to the ghost of Sam Darnold. Look, Seattle has been a fantastic team. Mike McDonald has done a tremendous job. Sam Darnold now is the 5th quarterback in NFL history to win 13-plus games in back-to-back years. That's amazing, and that Sam Darnold joins an elite list of like Brett Favre, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning to win that many games in back-to-back years. He To be fair, in the first half against the Panthers, he did not play well, but I have to give Seattle's defense credit. But it's where Sam Darnold has, in my opinion, had 4 games in his career, which were the biggest of his career. In those 4 games, I would argue week 18 last year. And for Sam Darnold, this is Groundhog Day. In week 18, he was a road team going on the road to have the number 1 seed, and where he had the edge at the 1 seed. And all he had to do was beat a divisional opponent on the road, and they would get the 1 seed. He looked awful when they got blown up by 28 points, 37-9 to Detroit. That game he lost. He lost the wild card game to the Rams, and he lost the first game in LA to the Rams earlier this year. The one game that he won out of his 4 big games was just 2 weeks ago against the Rams at home. And look, I understand the Niners. They lost Trent Williams early on in the game to a hamstring injury, and that's going to be very touch and go to see how that will go in that game, or in that regard to Trent Williams' status, and that is a big injury for the Niners. Don't get it twisted. Trent Williams is probably the best tackle in the game. He's been the best tackle of a generation and the best tackle since Joe Thomas retired about 8 years ago. But looking at this situation, knowing how good the Niners have been offensively, knowing the experience this Niners staff has in these big games, and Kyle Shanahan, and for everybody out there who knows, I am not the biggest Kyle Shanahan supporter, but I have to tip. I even have to tip my cap to the man, saying this has been the best year I've seen Kyle Shanahan coach. If you genuinely look at all the talent they've lost, all the types of wins they've had, the way Mac Jones and Brock Purdy have played in the system, the way Christian McCaffrey has carried the offense, both in terms of receiving and running, Robert Saleh's lack of defensive help, the kicking problems, the fact the Niners have a chance to be the 1 seed after all of that is just remarkable, and he would be my 2025 Coach of the Year. But we will, let's see how that goes. And it just, to me, like when you just look at this game, I know Seattle's healthier. Seattle played a tough game at home against the Niners back in week 1. And it's crazy that from week 1 to week 18, both these teams are in position to play just as good, if not as important of a game as they did in week 1. But when you look at how the Niners are playing, when you look at how Seattle's expectation is, this is going to test Mike Macdonald's theory. And I think the Niners, knowing that they have the opportunity to play a home Super Bowl, which is crazy. Think about, up until Super Bowl 55 with Brady and them, that nobody would have thought, nobody had ever been able to host the Super Bowl in their home building. And now it could happen for the 3rd time, I think, in the past 5 or 6 years, if the Niners win this game and have home field advantage. But that is, but it's just, to me, when you look at both these, the Niners staff have been here before, even with the injuries. I don't know if Kittle's going to play, and the Seahawks maybe can win just because of the injuries maybe hurting them. And I know Seattle's a better defensive team, has more talent and all that. But I just look at this game and go, give me the more experienced coach, give me the home field advantage, and I'm going to trust Brock Purdy, even though he kind of had an up-and-down game in Seattle at home, to execute and play a little bit more effective game compared to Sam Darnold in this big spot. Do I think he will play as badly as he did against the Rams or the Vikings? No. I just think Brock Purdy, with the way he's been playing, the confidence he has, he's the first Niners quarterback in Niners history to have back-to-back 5-touchdown games, pass and rush combined. I think the Niners are a little bit better and just have a little bit more momentum. And I'll trust the coach, the quarterback, and the home field advantage to get the Niners this win on Saturday night. So, should be a great game. Again, Carolina-Tampa Bay is the ugly, awkward game. This is a great one that whoever gets the 1 seed, it'll be a huge moment. But to be fair, for the Seahawks or the Niners, because of all the injuries and trust talent, I don't think the NFC is going to be scared to go into either building if either one has home field advantage. So that's all. Like San Francisco here -1.5, and San Francisco straight up. All right, the next game, the Atlanta Falcons over the New Orleans Saints. This one to me comes down to the Saints They have won, I believe, 4 straight games for the first time in about 4 years. So this Saints team has picked it up. Tyler Shugg and the Saints, who were down by 13 points to the Titans earlier in the game, Tyler Shugg's the best rookie quarterback of his class, and I said that last week, and I'm going to stick to it. He has been very good. He's been consistent, and for a team that everybody laughed at and thought when they drafted that kid, they were going to be destined for the number 1 pick, Shug on that, if you will. For how well he's played. I would argue he is the best quarterback of his class, and I think the Saints, at the very least, for next year, they don't need to draft a quarterback. I think they are going to let Tyler Shug, and they should let Shug continue to grow. But you watch the Saints, 4 straight wins. They've won 5 of their last 7 games after a 2-8 start. They've won 5 of their last 7. And I think it's for the Saints, it's a positive building block. But the reason why I have to go with Atlanta in this game is that Atlanta just was better. And they should get Drake London back. It's a home game. It's a meaningless game for both teams. I think, if the Saints win, it means more for the Saints than it does the Falcons. Because I think the Falcons should still fire Raheem Morris, even if they win. Just because I feel like, Raheem, having all this talent, having all these expectations and floundering that they couldn't really do anything for a long time, and then they win a bunch of meaningless games against the Cardinals, and and Tampa blows a game. This game for the Falcons has not meant anything. But I just think with Drake London coming back on that home field, I don't think, Shug are never going to be awful. They have some confidence, and they were they're on a 5-game winning streak. But I'll just take Atlanta with Drake London coming back, with Kirk Cousins playing as solid as he's been. The only way I would take the Saints is if Kirk Cousins gets hurt tonight against the Rams. If he gets hurt or he cannot play next week, I will take the Saints to win this game. But I just think of Atlanta with how they've been playing defensively, offensively, and just seeing Tyler Shug, seeing some of the moments he's had against the Titans, where the Titans had moments, I just think Kirk Cousins will have more opportunities to capitalize and play a little bit better than Cam Ward did yesterday. So that's all I like Atlanta here, -2.5, and Atlanta straight up. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Cleveland Browns. This one, to me, comes down to Joe Burrow being better than Shedeur Sanders. Look, I think for Myles Garrett, it would be absolutely hilarious if that man actually could not get the sack record. And he mentioned it yesterday after the game. It was kind of really quite funny that and I do kind of agree with him that the Steelers were basically dead set on him not getting the record, and I just think it would be the ultimate hilarious moment in Cleveland history for the guy who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but for Myles Garrett to not get a sack in his final 2 games where he needed 1, even in the 17-game perspective, would be just so Cleveland. And would be just a perfect way to put the ineptitude on Cleveland and Myles Garrett for being a choke artist for the Cleveland, fans. How great is that? You have literally 2 games to get 1 sack, and if you can't do it, you didn't break the record. You're going to get a Defensive Player of the Year regardless. But that'd be just so on brand for Cleveland. But just looking at the Bengals, they played this team before. It's weird how all these games are Week 1 divisional games. It's amazing how much 18 weeks have done for the Seahawks and Niners or the Browns and Bengals, and you just look at it and go, wow, a lot changed from the beginning to there. But I'm going to take Cleveland at +7.5 because the last time they played, it was a 16-14 game that Schmidt kicker missed the extra point or the field goal that could have won them the game. I think Cleveland, their defense has been able to get to Joe Burrow quite often enough. And I just think for the Bengals, it's just going to be, can he survive? Even though if I were the Bengals, I wouldn't play Joe Burrow at all. It is kind of disappointing for the Bengals that, you had Joe Burrow play. I do want to congratulate him. Apparently he did have his 28th 300-yard passing game, which ties a franchise record. So he's proving that how prolific he is as a passer. It's just unfortunate a bunch of meaningless football games. And I just think for Shedeur Sanders, he got a win, and he did outplay Aaron Rodgers. But if I'm gonna keep it 100 for everybody about the future of the Cleveland Browns quarterback, I do not believe it's Shedeur Sanders. I don't believe it's Dylan Gabriel, and I think Deshaun Watson should be allowed to have an opportunity to have an open competition with those three men, a legitimate open competition between Deshaun Watson, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. Or you don't want to take out Dylan Gabriel because Shedeur is proven. If you want to have an open competition between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, that is perfectly fine with me. Because what I've seen out of Shedeur Sanders, I have not seen enough in the grand scheme of things to tell me he is the guy moving forward. He hasn't had Tyler Shugg moments. And actually, to be quite honest with you, Tyler Shugg laps Shedeur Sanders in about every which way, in my opinion, from what I've seen. You've seen consistent play and growth of play from Tyler Shugg. Shedeur Sanders, you've seen good moments, and his best game was against the Titans, which he lost. But, that was his best game. The other games you've seen him play, it's either just been kind of awkward play, but just really bad decision-making in terms of wanting to take sacks, making interceptions, not being able to hit throws in key spots. There was a big fourth down early in the game where he just sailed a ball out of the sideline. And I just think for the Browns, he's shown enough talent that, he should be able to compete for the job. But I do think Deshaun Watson and maybe even Dylan Gabriel have earned the right to say, okay, all three of you guys are going to have a legitimate open competition throughout the preseason, and whoever can win out the job will get the job to start 2026. And I'm going to say to all three of them, just because I think that open competition happens, and even if none of them, if the other two don't lose the job, all I'm going to say is that just whoever wins that job, if that does happen in 2026, does not mean that person keeps the job for the remainder of the year. I just think that's how the job should start. But if you give Dylan Gabriel 4 games, Deshaun Watson 4 games, and you're not seeing any improvement, you go to the next guy, and then you go to the next guy to kind of test it that way. And then if they can't find a quarterback after 2026, that's when you draft a quarterback in a much more talented 2027 class, in my opinion. So, but that's all. Like Cincinnati here straight up, Cleveland plus 7.5. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Green Bay Packers. This one to me comes down to the Green Bay Packers resting players. The only thing I wanted to mention, a couple things I wanted to mention, was that Minnesota's defense, job well done against the Detroit Lions. 6 turnovers, and they just stymied the entire Detroit offense. They couldn't move the ball to save their life. Jared Goff looked incredibly awful. He had like 4 turnovers. I think they said in the game, the Lions had 8 offensive turnovers entering that game. The Vikings defense forced 6 of them. And Max Brosmer, which was a crazy stat also I found out, if you take in passing yards and sack yardage, the man threw for a grand total of a net 3 yards, and the Vikings won that football game. Also, the game broke open when Jordan Addison ran that 65-yard end around. Again, great speed by Addison, but shout out to the Vikings. They're 500, and I think in a weird way it's annoying for Viking fans that the moment they got eliminated from playoff contention, they go on a 4-game win streak or 4 or 5-game win streak with JJ and Max Brosmer at quarterback. And I just think again that they're going to be able to finish this win streak out because, like for the Packers, Malik Willis, who had, in my opinion, the best game of his career, 340 yards, 3 total touchdowns, no turnovers. I just don't know who's going to play for the Packers. Like, the Packers are locked in the 7th seed, and I think they're destined to lose the Chicago Bears at home again. And I think there should be serious questions for a fellow Matt and Matt LaFleur to possibly lose his job. Because I think Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur with this Packers roster, and I get that the defense, they got pounded by Derrick Henry, and they've lost Micah Parsons, who idiotically, today, I saw, ladies and gentlemen, literally about maybe a month after the holidays, he just had his ACL surgery today. He should have done what Patrick Mahomes did and had it the day after he tore it. And I'm just going to tell you, Packer fans, that's disappointing. Because now you might have to actually go into next year for the start of week 1 without Micah Parsons because he's still recovering from that ACL injury because he decided to wait a month to do that. So, but for me, I look at it and say, this Packers-Vikings game, the reason why I'm going with the Vikings is just because I feel like the Vikings are going to play a lot of their starters. The Packers are locked in the 7th seed. They have really nothing to play for. They're not going to really play any of their significant guys if they had to, and if they lose, they lose. And I just think the rest is more important. If Malik Willis plays and some of the other guys play, could Malik Willis outplay JJ or Max Brosmer to win the game with whatever's left around him? Sure, but I just think the Packers are just going to value rest over the win at this point. It sucks they're going to be on like a 4-game losing streak to go into the playoffs, but in that way, their Christmas gift should be thanking the Detroit Lions for being as inept as they were. So, but that's why I like Minnesota here to win straight up with Green Bay plus 6.5. Again, if Max Brosmer is going to start again, I will probably take the Green Bay Packers to win straight up as well, but I will update the spread line if that happens. So, but that's why I like Minnesota here straight up with Green Bay plus 6.5. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the New York Giants. This one to me comes down to the Dallas Cowboys. Dak and their offense is better than the Giants and their offense. When this game was played in Week 2, it was a 42-40 game. Russell Wilson's last great stand as a quarterback. One of the bittersweet games to watch. I think for the Giants, they should feel good that they were able to blow out a very bad Raider team. And Jackson Dart had another, pretty much sensational, flawless type game for the most part. But this is the Dallas Cowboys. This is a Cowboy team that's just been better. They have better receivers. That Giants defense has been pretty much inept most of the year. I think the Cowboys are better than the Giants. And the Giants, the hilarious thing the Giants have now done the last back-to-back years is they had an opportunity to get the number 1 draft pick both times at about this time of year in Week 17. And they decided to win the game beforehand to eliminate themselves from the top spot and give another team the number 1 pick. And I think that's absolutely hilarious because they might have cost themselves 2 very good picks that could have helped their team moving forward. So, again, could the Giants win? Sure. The Giants are, a bit spunky. Jackson Dart, can make some plays. And that Giants defense has played, especially Brian Burns, I think he's second in the league in sacks. He's had a phenomenal year. I just think for me, the Cowboys are just a bit of the better team. And with the environment in MetLife, as inept as it'll be, I think the Cowboys win this game at least by a score. So that's like Dallas here minus 5.5 and Dallas straight up. The next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Tennessee Titans. Jacksonville here, they're just fundamentally better. They're at home. They have the number 1 run defense. They have control of this division. They played this Titans team a few weeks ago. They won by about 20 points. They are rolling right now confidence-wise. They have the second most turnovers. And I like the Titans. I think the Titans, over the last few weeks, they've played more competent football in terms of being competitive, in terms of putting up good product. And Cam Ward has at least shown you growth and promise that because I would tell you this in the AFC South, the Colts are in the worst position in the AFC South. Not the Titans. It's the Colts. Because the Titans, they at least have Cam Ward. The Jags have a very good offense and a solid defense. The Texans have a very good defense and a solid offense, depending on what they get back and getting Tank Dell back and other weapons. The Titans have Cam Ward. The Colts have nothing, in my opinion. I think the Colts have nothing to really hang their hat on. But I just think in this game, knowing what the Jags have been able to do, knowing that they came off the big win against Denver, and they played the Colt game, they played a divisional opponent that was back and forth, that it was close. Phillip Rivers did throw a terrible interception that gave him the opportunity to kick the game-stealing field goal. But I just think the Jags understand what's at stake. They've been better than the Titans pretty much in every single way. And I just think the Jags will come, measure the moment, and win their first division for the first time since 2017. It's actually, since 2022. For the third time in about 10 years, third time in about 8 years, the Jags are going to win the AFC South, and who would have had that on their bingo card going into the year? I thought the Jags, their goal should have been 9-8. Getting 13 wins, going 13-4 with Trevor Lawrence playing this well is an incredible accomplishment. And Liam Cohen and the organization should be incredibly proud and optimistic about what they can build on with the future of this team. And I think the Jags, if Liam can continue to mend the ship and continue to grow, like this Jags team is going to be neck and neck with the Texans for years moving forward. So that's why I like Jacksonville here -10.5, and Jacksonville straight up. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Indianapolis Colts. This one, again, kind of like the same way. The Colts, they're going to start Riley Leonard. Phillip Rivers, for everything the Colts, went through, he wasn't incredibly awful for the 3 games that he played. The one game he could have won after Groupie made the 60-yard field goal. But for the Colts, this is an all-time sad collapse. And one of the players I kind of feel kind of bad for is Sauce Gardner. He was on the 1-7 Jets before he got traded to the 7-1 Colts. The Colts are now 1-7 since he got on there. So Sauce Gardner for the entire year was part of 2 wins on the team, and then he was 2-14 through a 16-game season in 2 different ways. Again, is he in a better situation than the Jets? Sure, but that's just incredibly disappointing for Sauce Gardner. It is kind of funny that he ended up in those spots. Where for the Houston Texans, hey, for them to go from 0-3 to go 11-2, or for D'Amico Ryans to pull a Bill O'Brien to get them into the playoffs and have the best defense in the league, to have C.J. Stroud playing solid, efficient football, Nico making plays, Jaden Higgins, Schultz, like this Texan team will be a very hard out for anybody that has to play them, in my opinion. But the reason why I'm going to the Texans here is because they are going to be playing for the division, and just in the sake of if the Titans somehow pull off the upset to beat the Jags, the Texans will have the opportunity to win the South. So I think both teams are going to play their start and see what happens. But I just think the Texans defense going against a rookie quarterback is just going to clamp down. They're going to harass the crap out of Riley Leonard behind that offensive line. Jonathan Taylor's not going to be able to run that much at all. And I do feel bad for Jonathan Taylor to an extent because he was leading the league in rushing. He could have been the offensive player of the year. And he still had a very good overall year for his yards. But just to watch the Colts go from the pinnacle of, they could get to the Super Bowl to they're 8-9 and the entire coaching staff and general manager should be fired, which is the right thing. It is incredibly sad. And like I said, they are in the worst situation in the AFC South because they do not have a quarterback or a draft pick to get a quarterback moving forward. So maybe the Colts, maybe make a call to Malik Willis themselves. But I like Houston here. Better run team, better defense. Stroud can manage the game with what's there. The Colts are going to be playing a rookie quarterback. I don't even think Stroud has to play that well to win because I think Riley Leonard's just going to have a terrible day going against a Houston defense in his first start. So that's all I like Houston here, -10.5, and Houston straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills of the New York Jets. The New York Jets are not a serious NFL franchise. The New York Jets are 1 game away from making NFL history by having their quarterbacks throw for at least 34 touchdown passes to no interceptions. Let me repeat that again. New York Jets secondary the entire year through 16 games. It's amazing that if we had a regular thing up to 20, they would have gone the entire year without getting an interception. And that stat alone maybe is justifiable enough to fire Aaron Glenn for his ineptitude. And they also, just for the record, they have the worst point differential in December in NFL history. The 96 Jets had a -175 point differential through December. The New York Jets this year have a -176. So that's how bad the Jets have been. And here's the problem. The Bills, look, they played a really gritty, ugly game against the Eagles. The Eagles' defense was fantastic. They were shutting them out. Josh Allen really couldn't move them well laterally, and I did have concerns about that. But the reason why I'm going with the Bills is Josh will have his first play, and then he'll finish the game. But you just look at the Bills and the Jets and go, it's bad we're the Bills' backups. I have enough confidence in the Bills' backups at home that they could beat this sorry excuse of a Jets team that's been tanking for the last 2 weeks. But the story for the Bills is that, again, the Patriots have now kind of evened up with them again. And I think the Pats are going on a positive trajectory or an upward trajectory. The Bills are kind of at a weird point like the Ravens, but they're kind of at a crossroads. And I just think, for me, that the Buffalo Bills, if they somehow end up playing Jacksonville or New England, or if they lose that first-round playoff game, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane should be relieved of their duties as head coach and GM. And all the questions around here as a Ravens fan about Lamar Jackson, those same questions Bills fans should be asking about Josh Allen. And I would say, I do not believe Josh Allen, if he loses in the first round this year with no Patrick Mahomes, no Joe Burrow, maybe no Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen will never win a Super Bowl for the Bills franchise, and the Bills need to move on. And he will always be, in the city of Buffalo, the Phil Mickelson to Jim Kelly's Tiger Woods. He will always be the second best quarterback this team has ever had. He might be the most talented one they've ever had, but in terms of success, Josh Allen will just always be a bridesmaid to Jim Kelly's, bride, or. And I think there are serious questions, and I would consider trading Josh Allen. Because I just think there is no way, with how this roster is getting constructed, with how his play has been, I think it's ran its course in Buffalo, as much as you want to give people opportunities. Like, the Bills, again, this game, they're going to rest their starters, but I think the Bills' backups are good enough. And Sean McDermott's a significantly better coach than Glenn. They should roll through the Jets. So that's like Buffalo -9 and Buffalo straight up. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the Detroit Lions. This one to me comes down to the Bears are playing for the 2 seed. And after watching the Lions, a team that I've gained a lot of love and admiration for over the last few years, after watching them self-destruct as they did against the Minnesota Vikings, I would tell everybody this. If I were the Detroit Lions, I'd fire Dan Campbell after Sunday. They're not going to, but this Lions team is very much in a situation to where they're kind of in a Commander situation to where maybe it's not as bad where you could argue the Commanders may have to rebuild. The Lions have to retool because this team, as currently constructed, they're never winning a Super Bowl with Jared Goff in this roster. They're not going to move on from Goff Rose because they just signed it. But I just feel like the Lions window is officially closed as being a proverbial team. I would argue the Bears now have the control of the division for the next couple years at least. The Packers would be there kind of when Micah gets back, and then maybe the Vikings if they have a quarterback. And I just think, for the Lions, it's disappointing because, you have one of the better offenses. You have a great offensive line. Jared, up until that game on Sunday, had been playing probably the best football of his career. But I think at the end of the day, with the Bears, they know what's at stake. They know how good they can be. I do think there is a concern about Chicago that their defense, if they can't generate turnovers, even though they did get a pick 6 on Brock Purdy, is that it's not a very good, talented defense because Brock Purdy should not have been able to put up 42 points and scored well without George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams through a majority of that game. But I just think the Bears remember what happened in Week 2. They got blown out and embarrassed by the Lions. The Bears offense and Bears team has gained a lot of confidence, a lot of talent, and a lot of ability, since then. And I just think for the Bears, they know Ben knows Dan and he knows his weaknesses. And I just think at home with the different factors of confidence, playing, inspired, playing for something, I think the Lions, or I think the Bears at home seal the deal and secure the 2 seed in the NFC, which would be a massive moment because that means they get to host the Packers in round 1, which should be another win for the Bears. Once again, so that's like Chicago, -2.5, Chicago straight up. The next game, the Denver Broncos over the Los Angeles Chargers. I am taking Denver here because I do not believe the Chargers will play their starters. The Denver Broncos and New England Patriots both have to play their starters due to them having tied records, but the Denver Broncos have the head-to-head edge. The Chargers are locked in due to the Chargers losing to Houston. They are locked into the wild card round, so I do not expect the Chargers to play a lot of their starters. They will rest, and I think the Denver Broncos just kind of comfortably get the win. The only question I would have for the Broncos is, I believe they said they are tied with the 2022 Minnesota Vikings for 12 one-score wins throughout the entire year. I do want to shout out Sean Payton. He is the 5th coach in NFL history to have multiple 13 or at least have 5 13-winning seasons. I think joining Bill Belichick, which is incredible for Sean throughout his career, that is impressive. But I just think the Broncos know what they have to do for it. The Chargers just take the bullet and just bite it and take the rest. I think for the Chargers, it's more important to try to rest their guys, especially going up against this Denver defense that's going to be playing for something, than it would be to try to play and knock the Denver out of the 1 seed to give New England an opportunity, because Denver essentially might be playing you in that next round anyway. So I wouldn't want to take 2 beatings from the Broncos regardless of what happens. So if the Chargers do decide to play their starters, I think it'll be an interesting game. But I don't think they will. I think the Denver Broncos at home get a nice, comfortable win to secure their first 1 seed, I believe, since 2015. So shout out to Denver in that regard. So that's like Denver here minus 7.5 and Denver straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders quit. Simple as that. The Raiders have quit on the team. The Raiders have no desire to play. Geno has a high ankle sprain, and they know what they're doing. They had the opportunity for the number 1 pick. And the Chiefs, for a very bad team and for a team playing with its third-string quarterback, I do have to give them that they at least were trying. And to me, I think with the Raiders, they're going to put some other guys on IR. They're not going to have Geno. They're going to put out people out there. But I think the Chiefs showed enough effort, enough heart, especially with this maybe being Travis Kelce's last game of his career. I think the Chiefs will at least play well enough and let Travis Kelce, if the career is over, go out on a win. So this game has a lot of importance for the Raiders in terms of getting their number 1 pick, which will be massive because I believe that means that Fernando Mendoza will likely end up a Las Vegas Raider come April. Good luck to Fernando there. I'd rather be Ferdinand, but that's it. But I'm going to take Kansas City here. They're going to play a little more pride, a little more hope, and I just think the Raiders, they've sealed their fate. They're happy about it, and I think they're going to try to do everything in their power to tank that game to secure the number 1 pick so they can move on from the Geno Smith era and get a new quarterback that maybe have a positive or to finally have some hope for Las Vegas in a very long time. So that's why Kansas City are minus 5.5. Kansas City straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to take Arizona here plus 9.5 because I think Arizona, they're going to be playing a bunch of the Rams backups, and I think they can hang around. The Cardinals have been in, I guess, more games than not this year. I know they got blown up by the Bengals last week. Jacoby didn't play that particularly well. But I do want to shout out Trey McBride very quickly. He did break the NFL single-season reception record for a tight end of 116 receptions. That's incredible, and it's very unfortunate they're on a 3-1 football team because that would have been actually more celebrated and heralded if he was on a better football team. The Cardinals, look, they should fire Jonathan Gannon. They should fire Monty. They have massive questions with Kyler next year, and this team is nowhere near contending for the foreseeable future. But I think the Cardinals, with the Rams resting their starters, with Jimmy G probably playing this game, I think the Rams still win the game because I think they're just more talented, and Sean McVay's just a significantly better coach than Gannon. But I think the Cardinals will hang around just because they're playing backups. And so that's why Los Angeles Rams here straight up at Arizona plus 9.5. The next game, the New England Patriots over the Miami Dolphins. This one to me comes down to Miami. It's been fun, but Quinn Ewers had a really bad game against the Bengals team that couldn't try. And then you have the game before that where, New England always had a tough time going to Miami. Miami very much the other way around. You're going to be in the cold. Drake May and them are going to try to play for the 1 seed. Drake May had a perfect passer rating, a 5-touchdown game, to 5 different receivers, with only 2 incompletions. And with the Dolphins thing, it's been fun, and they did have a cold win against the Jets beforehand. If it's under 40 degrees, I know it's not Tua, but this Patriot team is just significantly better in every which way, and they can try to get, gain some confidence to get to a 14-win season, even with the win, based on what's happened. So, but that's why I like New England here, minus 10, and New England straight up. Then the final 2 games, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Washington Commanders. Washington's not playing for anything. Mariota might play. Mariota might not. The Eagles, very impressive defense, shut out the Bills for about 90% of that game. Hopefully the offense can get better, and I think that's going to be the biggest problem I have with the Eagles going into the playoffs because they had a grand total of 17 yards in the second half against the Buffalo Bills. If it wasn't for Jalen Carter blocking that extra point, they might have lost that football game, in all honesty. But I'm going to take the Eagles here. They're going to be playing for the 2 seed just because, like with the Bears, they don't know what's going to happen against Detroit, and if they have the opportunity, if the Bears stumble, they will play. And as again, the Eagles are at home. They're better. They just played this team less than 2 weeks ago. They ended up stopping on them with a third-string quarterback. They should be able to do the same thing once again at home. So that's like the Philadelphia Eagles here, -8.5, and the Philadelphia Eagles straight up. And then lastly, the Baltimore Ravens over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game comes down to me to where, regardless if it's Lamar Jackson or Tyler Snoop Huntley playing a quarterback, the Baltimore Ravens should win this game because the Pittsburgh Steelers will have nothing offensively to go off of. DK Metcalf will be serving his suspension, the rest of his suspension. Calvin Austin is dealing with a hamstring injury, and Darnell Washington broke his forearm. So essentially, if the Ravens put Kyle Hamilton and Ar'Darius Washington on Pat Freiermuth, you're going to have the Steeler offense consist of Ben Skoranek, Scotty Miller, Adam Thielen, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Those are going to be their receivers. I don't think Jaylen Warren's going to have that impactful running game. The Baltimore should be able to run the ball more effectively, and that's going to be the biggest issue, is if the Ravens actually decide to run the football. Derrick Henry had a career high in rush attempts on Saturday, 36 of them. And they were able to win the game by 17 points, but even Tyler Huntley getting backpacked by Derrick Henry and pulling his best Black Christian Ponderick imitation out there. And I just think the question, for Lamar and them, I just think the Ravens are healthier. The Ravens have a formula. They have more talent healthy and are prepared to win this game compared to what Pittsburgh will have. And I just think watching that Steelers offense of Arthur Smith, it's not really going to go anywhere. And I just think the Ravens, they have a better running attack. They have a better defense. They have more confidence. And they just will have a more talented and healthy roster to deal with. The only issue will be if Lamar comes in and we do not commit to the run. I'm taking Pittsburgh here +3.5 because it is Ravens Steelers. And I will say this to everybody out there. Whoever loses this game, this should be the final game for that respective team's coach. And on Accountability Monday, on January 5th, their paper should be handed in, and they should be relieved of their duties as the head coach of their respective team. And the other thing is, funny news flash, it doesn't mean that the other coach is permanently safe for next year. They just give one more week of pay. Because whoever gets that win probably is going to lose to the Texans the week after, and those questions will be after that next coach. But the only advantage of this game is the winner gets one more extra week of pay and one more week of not talking about their job. But when I objectively look at this game with the injuries, with the ability, with the questions, and with TJ Watt being out, I think the Ravens, even if it's Lamar or Huntley, have enough talent with Tyler, have enough confidence with the lack of Steelers pass rush, that the Ravens can win this game even in Pittsburgh. It's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a brutal game. But what way would you not want to end the NFL season than a good old-fashioned Ravens-Steeler game for the AFC North and possibly the end of the two most longest-tenured coaches in the NFL outside of Andy Reid? So that's why I like Pittsburgh here, +3.5, and I will take Baltimore straight up. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. See other guys and gals that make predictions like I do, like Fire and Brim Sports, Andrew Warren, Geo Knows, the Goat House, any of those predictions. Please check them out. They're great people like I do to make predictions every week. Half Moon's picks. But that is it. So until next week, good luck to all fantasy players playing in a Week 18 championship league. And good luck to all coaches and fellow prognosticators and players. And until next week for my Wild Card Weekend predictions, which again will come out Monday, January 5th sometime, this is Matt the Automatic signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.